Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Debra Eckerling, creator of the DEB Method for Goal Setting Simplified. I am author of Your Goal Guide and 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting. I frequently say you can't reach your goals on your own, you need your people. So every week I bring together some of my people to dive into the topic. And today we are talking about advocacy. You may be watching us live as GoalChat Live or the replay, or listening to us as GoalChat on the Marketing Podcast Network. No matter how you found us, we are glad you're here and ready to lean in to advocacy. And a great panel I have today, my dear friend Howard Brodwin, who's the head of sports and social change, and new friends, Rachel Holman and Sandy Rosenthal. Rich and Sandy are both authors and spreading their word through their book. We'll have to talk to you about where your book is, Howard, at a later date. But we're here because we have a message to share. And I think when you truly believe in something, there's nothing better you could do but elevate all those messages. So that's what we're talking about today. I would love for you all to share a little more about yourselves. And we're going to start with you, Howard. So who are you and why is advocacy so important to you?
Okay. Well, thank you, Deb. Happy to be here. So who am I? Wow, what a great big question to answer. So I guess I would say I'm someone who luckily landed at the intersection of sports and the social impact space, and kind of organically found my way into it and have now kind of been immersed in that world for the last 15 years, and just finding ways to use the amazing platform of sport as a way to channel some sort of impact in the community. It can take on lots of different shapes and flavors, but it usually involves the participation in, or sometimes the watching of, sports. And then how are we using that to connect people to something that they're passionate about, that they feel connected to and want to find a way to drive change and potentially advocate for. And there are, I won't get into super detail right now, but I'm happy to jump in a little later. We working in the sports industry, we have a lot of different ways to connect the dots with kind of the business side of sport, what people look at from the entertainment side of, professional and collegiate sport here in the United States, around kind of the watching of sport, and how those platforms can be an opportunity to advocate for a variety of causes. And then the other side, which is the participation of, the enthusiast communities, people who are actively out playing sports, and what those communities can do to be advocating for, again, a particular issue, how to mobilize those communities that are, enormous and very passionate as well. And I've had, direct experience in both of those worlds for a number of years. And specifically one, and I'll share more again as we go. I spent the last 14 years doing quite a bit of work in sports for people with disabilities. And that work involves quite a bit of advocacy, and especially as an able-bodied person who is doing a lot of work to connect the dots for people who may be unfamiliar with how it is that we need to create programming for people with disabilities to participate in sport. What are the barriers that need to be eliminated to allow people to participate? So there's a lot of advocacy work that has to get done at a variety of levels: local, regional, national, even international. So that community has been great to be a part of and taught me a lot about how to be an advocate.
The other thing you raise an important point on is the ally factor. I mean, you do not have to identify specifically with a group to advocate for them. And I'm sure we will go down that rabbit hole in a little bit. In the meantime, Rich, welcome to GoalChat. Nice to see you. And you are muted. That has to happen. In this new world order, you're on mute happens in at least once every conversation. So thank you for getting that out of the way today, Rich.
Well, glad to be here, Deb. Thank you. I grew up as a military brat, so all over the United States and traveled around the world. A lot of different cities, undergrad, University of Texas, graduate school, Ohio State. Had 7 different careers in the States, and I moved to Medellin in 2007, Medellin, Colombia. Came here on vacation, fell in love with the city, started a real estate company with one person, and by pandemic time, we're up to about 110 employees, 6 offices, 8 partners in 3 countries. Pandemic basically sort of shut us down, though. But along the way, something very interesting happened. 8 years ago, I was dying. I was dead man walking. I had full blown metabolic syndrome, blood pressure 160 over 100, aches and pains, low energy. I was 72 years old. And, almost everybody I knew was over 70. Lost a lot of them were dead. So I figured that was it. And by the grace of God and pure blind luck, I read a book uh, against talked about the perils of sugar. And the day I finished that book, I took it to my office, and coincidentally, again, I was interviewing an agent, and his wife was a holistic doctor from Iran. I showed her the book, and she said, "You should do a detox." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Basically, it's 21 days, no sugar, no carbs, no booze." And I said, "Well, I'll try it." And my feet were like swollen like that. And the only 2 photographs that I have in my book are this photograph of my feet before and 7 days after sugar, my feet went normal. By day 21, my energy's through the roof. My blood pressure dropped 30 points. I mean, I felt great, no aches and pains. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Because my doctors had me on pills. Doctors are trained to put you on pills. So I spent the next 7 years researching why my doctor didn't tell me this and what was going on. And that's why I wrote my book, Killing You Softly, How Sugar is Killing Us. And sugar and processed foods is the biggest cover up in human history, kills more people than anything. Last year, just by chronic disease alone, we lost more Americans in all the wars since the Revolutionary War. And nobody talks about it in Washington. And I know why. It's in my book, and I've had additional research. But basically, it's the biggest cover up in human history. And why the United States is the sickest country in the world is because they're eating sugar and processed foods. They get 70% of the calories from processed foods. And sugar and processed foods are not food. They destroy your health. They kill you softly, slowly, and sweetly. And yet, nobody in Washington says a word because big food, big pharma, big health are in cahoots, make trillions of dollars getting us sick and keeping us sick and treating us with pills. And it's so sad because all people got to do is just do a little research, get off the sugar and processed foods, and the body is amazing the way it can recuperate itself. So I explain why and how this happened. And I mean, I know why. I know the whole history of sugar. I know the history of the corruption. I know the history of the lies. So I'm an advocate about saving lives. I was saved by a miracle, and I'm just trying to help people have the same miracle that I had. And the beauty is, it only takes 21 days to know the truth, and all you do is quit eating poison. So I'm an advocate for good health and
It
saving
sounds
lives.
very, very simple when you put it that way. And I'm sure, and there's more to it, obviously, because you have to also choose to live a healthier lifestyle. It's not just, it's not just a switch. You need to get to the point where you're choosing your health. Yes?
Well, the challenge though is people just don't believe or want to believe that sugar has poisoned your system. For 200,000 years, we never ate sugar; it wasn't around. And then suddenly, 150 years ago, started processing it, and it went mainstream in the 50s. And since the 50s, all hell has broken loose with cancer and heart disease and obesity and diabetes and Alzheimer's and depression and suicide and chronic kidney disease. And they're all chronic disease, and they all are largely preventable. But the money interests don't want us to know this, and they control the process from the time the food is grown with USDA subsidies to the putting it in processed food to getting it out. And the doctors are trained to prescribe pills. They're not trained to treat holistically or preventively. And it's a crime. It's actually criminal. And I could talk to you for this for hours, but it's in the book. And I think Sandy's got a bit of a handle on this too. I know when I did her show, we had a really good talk. So I'm just here to help some people. You're alive 30,000 days. Just take 21 to turn the corner and have great health. Because I'm 80 years old. I take no prescribed medication, nothing. And my whole goal is to live to be 100 healthily, because you can have a great time in the last quarter of your life if you have your health. If you don't have your health, you got nothing.
Well, good to see you. And I love that you took your survival story and you are trying to help others do the same. So great to have you here, Sandy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, as for who I am, I'm a New Orleans resident with no special training, no special knowledge, no special expertise. But after the levees broke during Hurricane Katrina almost 20 years ago, things didn't make sense to me. This fairy tale was swirling, and everyone in New Orleans, I mean, everyone in the country was being told that Katrina was just a huge storm and that those levees were just too small. And even though they were built fine, but Katrina was just too big, and that all of New Orleans is below sea level, and they're all corrupt down there, and they probably stole the levee money. And this was just the fairy tale that was out there. And I live in New Orleans. It didn't make any sense to me. So I started asking questions. And I kept asking questions, and I asked until I started getting some answers that made sense. And immediately I was harassed and ridiculed for asking those questions. Well, in my mind, here I am, I'm not an engineer, an attorney or anything. Why am I being abused and ridiculed just for asking questions? So that made me think I must be on the right track. So I assembled a team of experts, engineers, attorneys, media experts, and together we found out the truth. And the real truth about the flooding of New Orleans, it was engineering failure on the part of the federal government. It took about 10 years to find that truth and put it out there, but we did it. And now, almost 20 years later, as we are coming up to the 20th anniversary of that, still the most costly disaster and the most deadly disaster in the 20th and 21st century, at least we know the truth. At least the survivors know that about what really happened, and the truth is really out there. And I also discovered if again, someone with no expertise, no special training, if I was able to figure out a truth that no one else seemed to see, well, anyone can do anything. All you have to do is believe in yourself. If you listen to that inner voice telling you something's wrong, really, really wrong, and you just stick with it, and in the end, you will prevail. And that's my advocacy.
So here's a question, and I will open this up to the group. But what is that first step? Is it seeing something is wrong, and you need to raise your voice? What?
Yes, that's it. Seeing that something is wrong, and just not being quiet about it. Speaking up about it. And the moment you speak up, the moment you say, wait a minute, other people will go, I've been scratching my head too about that. And, I think you're right. And I'm going to join you. But it takes one person to stand up and speak out. That's all.
Yes.
Well, Sandy said something very, very important. She discovered there was some lies and corruption involved in the part of the federal government. I never questioned our government when I was a kid. I didn't even question it when I went in the military during the Vietnam War. And then later on is when I found out the military, they've been lying to us about the wars. I didn't know Nixon's domino theory was pure BS. I believed it when I went to boot camp. But so, Dwight Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex in his last day in a speech to Congress. But I didn't think anything else was wrong in Washington. Now I know there's so much lying going on, and the sugars.
I know that there's a big rabbit hole with the government, but what I really want to focus on is not your journey specifically, but ways in which people can embrace the causes they believe in and become advocates. So we're just gonna agree to agree. there are things going on in the world that are not quite on the up and up, and that's one good reason to raise your voice. I'd like to know from the gentleman what you think is the first step in becoming an advocate, and then we're going to back up a little bit. So, Rich, what was that for you?
For me, is when I found out that sugar and processed foods were poisonous, and how and why it was being covered up. So, but it's, I'm an advocate now for good health. I mean, that's my mission now in life, is try to set an example and try to help people learn the truth. So but it happened to me when again, it was pure accident that I got saved. I mean, I would have been dead 8 years ago, the route I was on. And, I just want to help people. But you got to have that knowledge. Sandy got that knowledge figured out. I got that knowledge and figured it out. So, truth and knowledge is critical.
Yeah. And that personal impact, because as you said, you didn't know until it happened to you. And that raised the question mark. Howard, what about you? How did you go? Because you're on a different side of this coin. What for you is first step?
Well, I think it's very much the same, because I think what both Rich and Sandy were alluding to was the need to get educated. And that starts with being curious and asking questions and finding other people and getting kind of their lived experience and starting to connect the dots. And that doesn't happen with one person and one conversation, I think but Rich alluded to how long he took to do his research, and Sandy mentioned a 10-year run of doing all of her work like this. I think that's really the key. I think, in some ways, we have this great world of all these tools to communicate and share and all of this, but also people can get one idea and have it confirmed by one person and then go out and start talking about it as if it's the truth, without actually taking the time to do the research and really understand the nuances of things. So I think even in the work that I've done, I've been working now in the disability community for 14 years. And after a period of time of being around people with disabilities and learning from them what is their experience with their desire to want to participate in something that most people take for granted. Whether we go to the gym or we go hiking or biking or play tennis or whatever it is, for a lot of people, they don't have the ability to do that. And like, oh, well, why is that? And I think, there's an assumption that, oh, well, the government provides that, or the local government or the high school or the whatever. And the answer is no, actually, that's not provided by any of those, institutions. So you don't know that until you start learning and meeting people and meeting organizations, and then trying to piece together, okay, well, why is that? Why are we in that circumstance? Which again, I think is, also what both Sandy and Rich are alluding to. Why is that the case? And then how do we find some solutions? How do we find things that everybody could get behind, that will benefit everyone? And I think again, using the disability community as an example, there's a common theme that gets talked about, which is universal design. So how are we envisioning things from the ground up to include everybody? So rather than going back and having to modify something, I work in the world that's often called adaptive or adapted sports. So these are sports that have had to been adapted to somebody who has a disability. But what if we envisioned something, whether it was a facility, an activity, whatever it may be, from the ground up with everybody in mind? And that's the concept of universal design. So in some ways, the advocacy can be, how do we change where we are right now? But how do we look a little further down the road and say, how do we avoid this happening again? How do we start to embrace other ways to look at the world by inviting other people into the conversation and getting an understanding of their perspective, and now saying, okay, maybe we can look at this all a little differently.
May I add one point to Howard's? That I agree with everything he just said. It is really important to educate yourself and read. It's a big secret. Read, and which often the people who want you to be quiet hope that you won't. They hope you won't read, but read. But you don't have to know everything from day one. You don't have to be educated in everything. And I think that's what's stopping a lot of people from speaking out and speaking up, is they don't feel that they're experts. And it's a truism that most of the people that do great changes in this world and do great things and are not experts in that field. In fact, it's often those experts who are so worried about their reputations and their careers that they don't speak out. So everything Howard said is true. It just doesn't have to be from day one.
Okay. The other point that was brought up is if one person agrees with one source is not education, it's needing to dig a little bit deeper to find out what the actual facts are versus the alternative facts, I guess is the right word. I do want to back up because we didn't actually define advocacy, and I would love to know what that word means to each of you. So, Rich, how do you define advocacy?
I would define it as, and I haven't looked this up, so this is my definition, but I
That's
think an
what I
advocate
want.
is somebody who's passionate about their beliefs and wishes to share them with other people to improve their lives.
Love that. And Howard, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think Rich is spot on. I think it's, very much kind of speaking up on behalf of something you maybe see in the world that impacts you and others, and you would like to see change. So, and again, that's why I say you can keep it fairly broad in that sense. But I think I use, and again, speak up can be literal, but it can be more broadly sensed as well in terms of, how are you using your voice, your platform, whatever it may be, to be able to share information, ideas around something that you feel passionate about, you feel connected to, and you see it's impacted yourself and it impacts others.
I like that as well. And Sandy?
Okay. In my mind, advocacy is a passionate drive for change. And the important word there is drive. The leader for this change has to constantly be driving, tweaking, changing, throwing some things out the window because they don't work. Maybe change the word choice, but constantly tweaking, driving. It is not temporary. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And all great changes are not a sprint. All great changes are a bit of a marathon. But both Rich and both Howard both said excellent things, and I just took what they did and added that one last thing: drive.
And I particularly like it because my realm is goals. I advocate for the way people look at goals because a lot of people think it's a 4-letter word, which it is, but I like to think it's the good kind. But I think what you just put out there it's the intent. The journey will change, but when you've got that intent in mind, that really is the force that drives you, that propels you forward and gets other people on board as well. And we've got Lena, who's listening or watching live. Change is a marathon. Absolutely. It's change, it's goals, it's anything that you want to do for the greater good, whether it is for yourself and in turn for others. It would be great to get there yesterday, but putting the groundwork in order to build a solid platform, to learn, to get the education you need in order to elevate that idea or cause or anti-conspiracy. I think I pretty much bundled everybody in that. What do you think stops people from being advocates?
Can I go first?
Yes, please.
Fear of criticism, fear of being criticized, fear of someone laughing at you. And I'm so happy to have this response to that. I think that's the number one thing that stops people. And I'm here to tell you all that criticism is your friend. It's free advice. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. And it's the critics who will give you really, really important information that you might not have thought of before. And it's happened in my experience over and over and over again, which is in my book.
I like that it's free research. That's a very unique way to put it, because you do have information that you can sort through in more rabbit holes to go down. And so, Howard, what do you think stops people from becoming advocates?
I agree with Sandy on the fear piece, but I'll add the other thing that Sandy mentioned earlier, which is the marathon. That this takes so much time, and I think for some people they might start down the road and then recognize, oh wow, this is not going to happen that quickly. I'm going to have to put a lot more time in, and I think that can scare a lot of people away as well. Just the commitment, the factor of how much they're willing to dive in and get educated and then run the risks that she alluded to. But I think it is going in with that knowledge of what this is going to take. I think that, once people do recognize that, they might get started and then realize, wow, I don't know that I have it in me to go the distance, because you don't know how long that's going to take. There is no timeline that says you'll be complete. Your advocacy work will be done on this day. So you're willing to make that commitment to be in it. That's, that I think can scare a lot of people away.
And again, does not just apply to advocacy. It applies to any big picture goals. And I interviewed someone earlier today for my other show, my Taste Buds with Deb, and it's the same thing. When I asked her what she knew now, she said that patience is a virtue. That sometimes not yet just means that things are going to they'll get you there. But sometimes it takes a while for things to fall into place. Rich, same question. What do you think stops people?
Well, in my case, in my observations, it hasn't been fear or marathons. To me, it's just knowledge and truth, because I never knew how many lies we've been told about so many subjects. And until you can dig in and find out the truth, with me, once I found out the truth, I became an advocate. And if the internet wasn't around, I'd be dead right now. But I was able to immediately go to the internet and dig, because, I mean, I don't want to beat a horse here, but you just can't trust the traditional media for your news and information and facts. You have to dig. And, I read all 35 of these books behind me. I've done hundreds of hours of podcasts, hundreds of articles for 7 years. But it really got me invigorated to be an advocate for good health and telling the truth, because, man, there's just, like what our government does in the United States to keep us divided, dumbed down, and distracted. So we don't even seek the truth. We're sort of in this little zone, and we have until you get out there and research it, you just don't know. So for me, and I just got lucky, and I find the truth.
Well, the stakes were really high for you. The stakes were your life. So that in and of itself was probably a very motivating factor.
Yes, and it still is.
So we know the things that stop people. What is your argument? And Sandy got into this a little bit as well as Howard, but how can you encourage people to become advocates? What are those words of wisdom to reverse all of the counter arguments?
Okay, I'd love to jump in with that one. First off, the friends you'll meet. My life is so much richer because of the friends that I've met when I decided to take on this goal of educating the whole country about the truth about the flooding. But with regard to that marathon, there are a lot of things that make that marathon nice or okay or more pleasant. When you open up your mouth for the public good, people will come to you and offer their expertise for free. And those who can't offer their expertise, they'll offer donations. And these people are happy to do it. And it'll just come to you. And you can also ask, you can put out a request. I'll give you a great example. When I do a request to the federal government under the Freedom of Information Act, sometimes they cost money. There's nothing people will open up their purses more for than to help me pay for a request from the Freedom of Information Act, because it's a free. It ought to be free, but that's just an example. So the people shouldn't worry about those things. The important thing is, and do you really believe in what you're doing? And usually that's all you need, to get you through that marathon. But I don't want to be negative. It's whatever it is you do, it's going to take a little longer than you thought and be a little harder than you thought. Okay? Yeah. But it was still worth doing. And all of those people who have succeeded, Rich, myself, and many, I can give you the names of many others, they all would say they would do it all over again.
I love that, because you need to dig in to get as many negatives as there might be, as many reasons, air quotes for those who are listening. It sounds like there are dozens of counterpoints. And of course, the benefit is the greater good of the world. It's a little ethereal, but I'm also the D in the Deb method stands for determine your mission. So whether it's your own life, your personal path, or advocating for others, when you've got that mission behind it, that is the fuel that's going to keep you moving forward, despite all the roadblocks and time that it's going to take. So what is your counter argument, Howard, to all those people who say, I'd love to be an advocate, but ... What are the benefits?
What are the benefits? But I think it goes to kind of what you were just referring to, Deb, which is, where do you feel authentically motivated and connected to something? And so I think it starts with that. If you don't know what that is, that's where you have to go. You have to go find that first, because you can't just go, oh, I want to be an advocate and I'm going to be an advocate for, climate change awareness. Okay. Because it's topical, or it's going to make me look good, or I can add it to my Instagram feed or whatever, right? All of the superficial reasons. So I think the key is, where's the authentic thread for you as an individual? Why is this important? Again, you can go back, Rich's life was at stake. Sandy lived through, a natural disaster. Like, these are lived experiences. So they have a direct connection to why this is an important, issue, and what they want to be able to speak about, to make sure others are aware of. And for myself, that's why I said I alluded to this earlier. So I've spent 14 years working in the disability community. And I've worked both with people with cognitive and intellectual disabilities and people with physical disabilities and mobility impairments and visual impairments and hearing impairments. And those communities are slightly different, and the service profiling is a bit different as well, but the broader sense of working with people with disabilities. I'm basically an able-bodied person. However, I do use an assistive device. I've had this assistive device since I was a little kid, so I do have a mild visual impairment. You just use corrective lenses. But what I also know is, as someone who grew up being excluded from things, and one of the opportunities for me was being able to play sports allowed me to feel a sense of belonging and inclusion. So I know how powerful that is. I know what it feels like to be left on the sidelines and not included. And I know how it feels to then be included and have a platform like sports to be able to bring me in and make me feel as a little kid that I was a part of something. So that makes it easy for me when I meet an entire community of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of them around not only the United States, millions around the world of people with disabilities, to go, yeah, I know what that's like. I know what that's like to be left out or to be told, well, you're too different and we don't have something for you, or don't you have another place where you could do that? I do have that lived experience. It may not be exactly the same. I may not be using a wheelchair or missing a limb, or, have the visual impairment to the point where I can't see, but I know what that experience is like. So now my ability to be the advocate is very authentic. And it became pretty easy for me to be the able-bodied person in the room, to raise their hand, which I did quite a bit in the last 10 years, where conversations would happen around DEI, around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is dynamite that we're having those conversations, but very rarely is the word disability included in those conversations. It's usually race and gender and ethnicity and sexual orientation and all these other things, which are all incredibly important. And then nobody ever says the word disability. And so that's why I say to be the able-bodied person who has to actually, raise the hand and say, can we talk about that as well? That changes the dynamic. And that, for me is, I can advocate for that community. Because I know that experience. I may not have their exact lived experience, but I have my own, and I know what that's like.
Oh, I just love how well you put that. And it goes back to what you were talking before. It's raising your voice. It's raising your hand and contributing to any conversation where what you advocate for needs to have a say. Rich, what do you say to those people who are on the fence about becoming advocates? What do you believe are the benefits? Other than, that you're alive, which we like, or else it would be a quieter conversation.
When I was listening to Howard, a couple words jumped at me, and disability was one and kids was another. What keeps me going, and where I try to create more advocates or want advocates to join the fight is if you got chronic disease, that is a disability, and you're going to have to live with that and fight it. And the poor kids are the ones suffering the most. Our kids are now in the third generation sugar addicts. Back when I was a kid, less than 1% of kids had diabetes or prediabetes. Now it's 30%. Autism, 1 out of 25,000. Now it's 1 out of 34. I mean, this all started when the sugar went into our mainstream. So I love when I see somebody improve their lives. Like the gal that's been with me 17 years that does my cooking, ironing, cleaning once a week. She's got a son, Simon, who is overweight, lethargic, and I got her to get him off sugar. Now this kid's slender, he's taking art classes, sports, grades. I mean, it's like, that's so cool. I had a Carrie, an ex-Marine, retired diabetic, read my book, and 2 months later is off insulin. Maria, one of my agents in her 50s, she did the 21-day detox, and now she's slender, looks great, happy, better energy. It's just so neat to see people, to see their lives change for the positive, and that just keeps me going and helps create more advocates. So it's a grassroots movement to some degree, what's going on, but there are medical people getting involved, and it's just we're fighting against the government hasn't come on board yet. It took 50 years to get the government on board with tobacco. So we're going through the same thing with sugar, but it's going to happen. I know what's going on. We're probably 15 years away before the government gets involved. So
the word that you referred to, the word you didn't mention, but is all over that answer, is transformation. And I think that, underlined is the benefit for things to be better.
Yeah. Good point. Yes.
So is there something now that you wish you knew when you started your advocacy journey? Rich, do you want to start?
To me?
Yeah, let's start with you.
Well, yeah, it's really obvious. I wish I'd have known this, and my parents would have known it when I was just a kid, because I have seen and met sugar-free kids, and they're like old souls. They don't fidget. You sit there for an hour at a meal. They're just there. They're present. They're looking in the eye. They're so cool. And I know all the signs, because now my whole goal after eating right is is, anti-aging and doing all the protocols. But you got to quit sugar and processed foods first. But the kids today, the youngsters that are like 4, 5, and 6, if they get on board early into these protocols of eating right, exercise, sleep, they're going to live to be 120, 130. It's very, very possible with what's going on in the technology and the science of anti-aging. So I wish I'd have known, because I'd have made it to 130. Now, my goal is making it to 100. So I've already sent invitations for my birthday party. So, but I wish I'd have known it when I was 4, because I could have another 30 years. But the key is you want quality years in the last part of your life, not just years, but quality years. And, I just wish I'd have known, but I didn't. But I try to spread the word to anybody, especially people that have kids.
And Sandy, I know, is chomping at the bit to answer this one too.
Well, actually, I didn't answer the last question yet.
Oh, about the benefits? I thought you said that the benefits were to make new friends.
Oh,
and get people with
advocacy.
Right.
Okay.
Did you want to add to that answer?
Well, I thought the question was, how can one advocate? And I think you don't have to be a leader to be in advocacy, like me and Rich and Howard. You don't have to be a leader. You can also advocate just by signing a petition. And I think people don't realize how important those are. These petitions that people probably receive in their email box a lot. Sign this petition for this, sign it for that. And some people are afraid to add their name to a petition. And so my point is, everyone can advocate, and it's very easy to do. And if you're nervous about a petition, just ask the person that sent it to you. Say, if I sign this, will my name be publicly available? Just ask. But these petitions are remarkably important. And like sending letters to the mayor, remarkably important. And people don't have an understanding of how important it is. And that's a way that everybody can advocate without having to take 10 years at it. So anyway, that was what I wanted to add to that. That's a question I thought I was answering. Okay.
Now we move on to what do you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your advocacy journey?
Okay. One of the things that happened a lot when I first started my advocacy was a lot of people would come to me and say, oh, there's information I can't tell you. There's information that you don't know. And I can't tell you. In time, that information will come out. But you'll see in time that you're wrong. Well, I now know that's all baloney. It was baloney. And these were people trying to shut me down. And so one of the things I now know, don't listen to any of that. Don't let anybody scare you. And if there's anything that's really scary, it's the unknown. When people say, oh, there's information you don't have, but I can't tell you, that's pretty unknown and pretty scary. Well, I now know these were people just trying to shut me down. And so I wish I'd have known that 10 years ago. I would have pushed a lot sooner, harder, and stronger.
Oh, I love that. You got through it. That's a great message. What about you, Howard?
I think I kind of want to answer this 2 ways, because there's a part of me that, says, I don't think there's anything. I think you have to go through the experience. I think you have to go through the whole journey. And so you almost kind of need to go in not knowing and learn along the way. So I think there's a part of me that, that feels that that's really important. And I guess the other side is, I guess it would be, I want to say kind of find your people, but I think it's bigger than that. It definitely is finding your people, but it's also allowing those people to show you who they really are. And that, I think, is that again goes back to the time concept, that this is a marathon, not a sprint, because you might meet somebody at the very beginning of your advocacy journey who looks and feels like they're in it with you and on board and all fighting for the same things. And then over time, maybe they're not, and maybe things change. So I think I think that you have to be careful. I think at the beginning of a journey, or at any point in time in the journey, the thrill of the fight can kind of overwhelm, and you feel like you're all in it together and you're all fighting together. But I think you have to allow people to really show you who they are, and time is what allows for that, because that's where actions start to match up, right? If actions and words are matching up, great. But if actions aren't matching up with words, you start to question a little bit, are these really the people who are in the fight with me? Are they fighting for it for the same reasons I'm fighting for it? So that I think takes time. So, that's why I say, I think it would be great to know that going in, who those people are. And I think you kind of have to let that evolve.
Agreed.
For those of you who are just listening, the face that Sandy just gave and the gesture was priceless, because you don't know, but that is an important part of the journey.
Yeah.
I think what you can do is make an educated guess when you meet people that the values align. And if people tell you who they are and it's different, then believe them.
I mentioned earlier, it's called trusting your inner voice. You've got to trust your judgment.
And people might change on their own journey too. They could start out one way and then get really deep into it or run the other direction, but you don't know. And all you've got is that marathon to see who people truly are, I guess is the point. Really deep conversation. I love to leave people with takeaways. So what goal would you like to gift to those tuning in? What can they do to become better advocates? Sandy, do you want to start?
I would say that it might not be a bad idea to decide what your values are and pursue those, because you can't be everyone to all people, which happened to me a lot as an advocate. When I was pushing for the things I wanted done, a lot of people approached me and said, oh, well, why don't you take on this cause and that cause and that cause? And which it just, you get spread too thin. So I would say decide on those things that are most important to you and most valuable to you, and maybe hone your energies on those. Not to say that the others aren't important, not to say that, but I think people will be less exhausted if they decide what they really care about and go there.
Really good point, because it is very easy to go in different directions, but that focus in alignment with your values is really a good starting point. Rich, other than don't eat sugar or processed food, what goal, or in addition to detoxing, what goals do you have for people to get in touch with their inner advocate?
Well, I mean, as you know, my goal in life is helping with, improving people's health. I don't know anything more valuable in our life than good health. I don't care how many billions of dollars you got. If you got bad health, you don't have anything. And to me, this process is, I want to give people informed consent. We talked, you're alluding to earlier about what's the detractors and who do you trust. And, when I first started this mission, it's like people say, more, you just want the government involved. You want taxes, you want this, you want that, just let people, all people need is discipline, and they'll be fine. But no, they need informed consent because they don't know the truth. So informed consent is that, to me, is the key to the advocacy, the key to getting people on board. And I just want to be a part of that process, helping, because I remember when I was a kid watching black and white TV and watching Gunsmoke, and an advertisement come on. There was a doctor walking out smoking a cigarette for a Camel, because it gives you more energy, make you feel better. I mean, this is what I was subjected to. So no wonder I was smoking fake candy cigarettes, Joe Camel cigarettes. That's what we were bombarded with. We didn't have informed consent. And it took 50 years to get people to understand before people got involved, the government, the newspapers, the news. So I think, to me, informed consent, I want to be a part of that process.
So how can we turn that into a goal for others? If there's something you care about, learn more about it.
No, I mean the goal is to educate people with the truth. That's the goal. I don't know how else to phrase it. I mean, if people want to have good health, they got to educate themselves that food is medicine, and
Okay.
our
So
our system of medicine.
the
Yeah,
goal is then to get educated so you can educate.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can turn anything into a goal. That would be my superpower. Howard, what goal do you wish to gift today?
I think I'll kind of lean back into some of the things we shared earlier about the authenticity and even the lived experience side of it. And I think the goal is just be brutally honest with yourself as to why you're doing this. I think that's the goal. Like take the time to really reflect on why is this important to me, and why, because again, if you're really gonna go on the marathon, you got to know, like, I'm doing this for the right reasons. And again, my panelists here are in it for the right reasons. It's so authentic. So I think that's really the key for a lot of people. Like, are they willing to? Because some people just aren't willing to really take a deep dive, look at themselves. Am I doing this because it makes me feel good? Am I doing this because it pumps up my ego? Again, am I doing this because I can post it on my social media? Like, why am I doing this? Like, that's the goal, is to really dig in and do a deep reflection on, why am I going to commit myself to advocating for this particular issue, and am I ready for what it's going to take?
And we've decided what it takes is time, energy, and passion. Did I miss anything?
Mm-hmm.
This is, like I said, this has been a very deep dive into taking a look at your life, seeing what you believe in, and how you can make the good translate out from you. You are the starting point, which is, I think, is important for advocating for causes, but also advocating for yourself and your beliefs and the path that you want in life, no matter how deeply or far it intersects with being an advocate for others. So truly important stuff. Friends, where can people learn more about you and all that you do? Howard?
Best place for me is sportsandsocialchange.org. And you can certainly find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with folks. And those are the two best spots for me.
Excellent. And Rich, where's the best place for people to learn more about you and your book?
Well, there's two easy ways. One, just Google Rich Holman Medellin, and everything is there. Everything: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, my real estate company. But the other one is besides that is just go to Amazon, look up "Killing You Softly," Rich Holman. It's in Kindle or print form, and hopefully, if you get the book, you'll start saving lives. Save yours first, and then others. And if you got any kids, it's a must. If those kids are eating sugar, got to stop it.
Excellent. And Sandy, where can people learn more about you?
It's very simple. My name, sandyrosenthal.net. And if you go to that site, you'll find out anything you can possibly want. You can find out about my book, my podcast, my organization that I created. And I'm very happy to point out that my book, Words Whispered in Water, is being printed in a second edition that will be coming out. I'm very excited. Thank you. That will be available for order starting in March of 2025, and it will be on time for the 20th anniversary of the flooding. So thank you so very much for having me on your show.
That's wonderful news. Yes, we found out that Sandy and I are both Mangoes, authors with Mango Publishing. And there is something about getting your words not out just verbally, but through the beauty of a book that really, it just extends your reach. And for me, it's fun. Yes, writing books are fun because it's just another way of looking at who you are, what makes you unique, and spreading that message along the way. So loved all I love these conversations because yes, Rich and Sandy knew each other through our friend Anastasia, who introduced them to me. And Howard and I, back, in the days of real life, we would hang out through our social media club LA and karaoke nights and all the sorts of fun social interactions. And I like throwing people together who might normally to give different parts of the conversation. And I think we had 3 very important perspectives today. So I thank you all. You can go to thedebmethod.com/blog to read the recap and get the goals and also get everybody's links. I am at the Deb Method everywhere, and you can subscribe also on YouTube and watch me live every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And if you need a little bit of a help towards your goals, you can reach out to me or grab a copy of your goal guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, and or pre-order 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting, which will be out from Mango in January 2025. Next year will be here before you know it. So I say set some goals now so you get wins by the end of the year, and you can go into next year with an advantage that you've got these wins, whether it's through advocacy or what you teach through your business, what you offer to help others, and get a running start into making the world a better place. Friend, what final thought would you like to leave everybody with today? And Sandy, let's start with you, final thought-wise.
There's nothing to be afraid of. There really is nothing. The world is a wonderful place. America is a wonderful place. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's no one to be afraid of. And certainly don't ever let fear get in the way of doing what you think that you should do, doing what you feel you must do.
Really, really important point, because we have the power. We just kind of have to take it, right?
That's right.
Rich, what final thought do you want to leave people with?
Wow. I guess when you go to your doctor, first question you should ask you is, what'd you eat for lunch today? If he doesn't ask you that, switch doctors. No, it's health is the biggest, most critical issue. It's an existential threat to the United States of America. And chronic disease is going through the roof, and it's not slowing down. And people have got to take charge. They've got to educate themselves, and they can't trust what they're seeing in the newspapers, and not even their doctors, because they're not trained in nutrition. So less than 1% of doctors are trained in nutrition. So you have to take this on your own. You have to, and the information is all on the internet. Just Google whatever topic and take a look. Go to your AI bot, but it's up to you to take charge of your health. Otherwise, you're gonna spend the last 13 years of your life miserable with doctors and sick and surgeries. So it's up to you. Please do it.
Got it. Okay, Howard, final thought to you.
Sure. I quote this gentleman often, and probably one of the best examples of advocacy I think this planet has seen, and that is the late, great Nelson Mandela. And he once said, "Sport has the power to change the world."
Ooh. So be healthy, don't be afraid, and use sport, which has the power to change the world. Did I put everybody together in a way that did not mangle everybody too much? I hope. Thank you all again so much for the lively and informative conversation about such critical issues. I mean, it is our life, it is our health, it is our advocacy that is going to make change. Thank you all again, Howard Brown, Rich Holman, and Sandy Rosenthal. Thank you for tuning in to GoalChat, whether you're watching us live, the replay, or listening to the GoalChat podcast. We're glad you're here, choosing your health and your advocacy in moving forward. There's nothing out there to stop you. So go on out there and go for it, because we know you can be a better advocate. You can do it.